At least fighting age men, again dressed in their underpants, giving themselves up. We saw one video of a man coming forward, following instructions being delivered over a megaphone, carrying an automatic weapon, putting it down on the ground and then retreating. So those images are starting to kind of flood social media, whether that is the deliberate strategy of the Israeli military or whether it's just something soldiers are doing of their own volition. We just don't know. But clearly the impression that that is intended here is one of showing Hamas slowly being defeated.
Let's show you some live pictures of Gaza now. We can see large plumes of smoke billowing out at the top of the skyline there. That's the view into Gaza from Israel. And let's just bring in Behnam Taleblu, who is a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, where he focuses on Middle East security and political issues. Hello to you. Thanks very much for joining us. What do you make of the head of the Israeli army saying that Hamas is falling apart after 2 months of bombardment of the Gaza Strip?
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you. Listen, I think in short, it's a little too soon to take a victory lap, even if it's a politically motivated victory lap. The Israelis earlier this week had mentioned that the main artery or the new focal point of the battle would be the town of Khan Yunis. And as the IDF moves further and further south, the challenges of navigating urban warfare, the civilian population, the use of human shields, as well as receiving or being on the receiving end of sniper fire, as well as anti-tank weapons, will grow in operational complexity, let alone that's prior to even, I should say, one even considering the political implications of what does a political win look like once Khan Yunis is cleared and can be held. So it is good news for those who do want a swifter end to the conflict, that there are more and more Hamas fighters giving themselves up, whether you believe the social media videos or not, be it in the tens or in the dozens. But there's still a fight left to go because of the munitions that Hamas has and has been able to take with it, munitions like rockets, which were refired again over the weekend.
Is it possible to say, in terms of the leadership of Hamas, how much that has been affected by the bombardments?
I haven't been able to confirm, for instance, from social media or from news coming out of the region at this point in time, during the Khan Yunis campaign, I should say, what the status is of the Hamas leadership. There was talk again earlier this week that as the IDF moved closer into Khan Yunis, that the focal point would be going after Yahya Sinwar, who was believed to be there.
So do you expect things to increase even more than they are? I mean, as General Halevi is calling for things to be stepped up in Gaza, do you expect a significant increase now?
I do. It just depends a great deal on how one chooses to define a significant increase. Perhaps a greater tempo of the operations, particularly as talks in the international community about a ceasefire continue to be pressed in the background. We had the vote over the weekend that the U.S. did veto at the United Nations. That may be one thing spurring the Israelis to go further. The second may be domestically within Israel. Of course, we cannot forget about the domestic political pressure on the administration there, particularly the Netanyahu government to bring back all the hostages. So there's a concurrent hostage campaign as well as to be able to consider or walk and chew gum at the same time what a political solution in the aftermath of a successful military defeat of Hamas in Gaza would look like as well. So all of these things are necessitating the Israelis to move faster, perhaps introducing different kinds of weaponry, perhaps going after both Hamas leaders as well as Hamas munitions depots, and trying to force more images of what success looks like, which might be, of course, those Hamas fighters surrendering.
Let's talk about the role of the US a little bit more, and perhaps the relationship between Israel and the US, because it does seem to have evolved over the last 2 months in terms of what the US has been saying. It started off with this almost sort of unequivocal support, and then there's been these pressure mounting publicly, I suppose, from the US about the civilian casualties. Do you sense a sort of a frustration from the US, or where do you think things are going in terms of that relationship? Could we see the US maybe threatening to withdraw support a bit if Israel doesn't do what it seems to want it to do?
I'm glad you mentioned the external factor, meaning the U.S. there. There was a line Secretary of State Blinken is alleged to have said on one of his trips to the region about Israel not having enough credit for that. And these sorts of lines, if they're true, is music to the ears of the greatest external foreign patron of Hamas, which is the government of the Islamic Republic of Iran, which in my view has long tried to use the images coming out of the conflict to force, perhaps not a divorce, but to force more political space between America and Israel. And in fact, concurrently, by opening up another theater of operations, the Iraq-Syria one, starting on October 17th to present, where there's been over 70 attacks against U.S. forces to try to force America, for fear of an escalating conflict, to try to politically constrain and restrain Israel, leading to a line that many have heard, which is that Israel is not militarily going to be permitted to win some of these wars. So that's precisely what that political tension you alluded to is precisely what Hamas's patron is hoping will lead to Hamas surviving in some way, shape, or form. And this will lead to more political challenges within Washington, as well as within the U.S., as to how different parts of American society are looking at what does success look like, as well as, of course, the new evolving coalition politics in the Democratic Party here, and what that may do to Biden's resolve, President Biden's resolve to continue to stand by Israel. So it's very fast moving.
Okay, thank you very much, Behnam Taleblu. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, as the Israeli bombardment of Gaza continues, the United Nations says that half the population of the territory are starving and 9 out of 10 can't eat every day. The UN World Food Programme insisted that only a fraction of the food supplies needed were coming in, but an Israeli military spokesperson said that they were doing everything they could to get aid into the Gaza Strip, but trucks needed to be checked first for security purposes. The UN is negotiating with the Israeli government over the possible opening of the Kerem Shalom border crossing from Israel to help increase supplies of aid. Let's speak now to Hiba Tibi, who's an acting deputy regional director of CARE International. How much aid is getting in at the moment? Because we did see an increase, didn't we, during the truce days?
Good morning, Lucy. Unfortunately, even during the truce day, while the numbers got higher,